My name is Ellen Harper, and I'm 68 years old. For years, I thought love was measured in dollar bills, in late-night phone calls to fix someone else's mess, in the quiet sacrifices I made to keep my family afloat. I was wrong. This is the story of how I learned that love doesn't come with a price tag, and how I took back my life from those who saw me as nothing more than a walking checkbook. It all started with a phone call on a chilly October morning in 2025, in my small craftsman-style house in Portland, Oregon. The rain was tapping against the windows, and I was sipping my second cup of coffee, trying to decide whether to repaint the guest room I'd been neglecting. The phone rang, and I saw my daughter Kelly's name on the screen. My heart did that familiar flip. Half hope, half dread. Kelly didn't call unless she needed something, and I'd learned to brace myself for what came next. "Mom, it's me." Kelly's voice was sharp, impatient. "We're in a bind. The landlord's threatening to evict us. Can you send $600 for the rent? It's due tomorrow." I froze, the coffee mug warm against my palms. For 5 years, I'd been covering Kelly and her husband Derek's rent, their groceries, their car repairs, everything. I'd paid off their $2,000 credit card debt twice, bought them a new washer and dryer when theirs broke, and even sent $500 for their dog's vet bills last month. All told, I'd given them over $40,000 since they got married. My late husband, Tom, left me a modest inheritance, enough to live comfortably in retirement, but I'd been dipping into it to keep Kelly's life from falling apart. "Kelly," I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be, "I sent you $1,000 last week for the electric bill. What happened to that?" She sighed, that exasperated sound she'd perfected over the years. "Mom, things come up. Derek's hours got cut at the warehouse, and we had to pay for car insurance. You know how it is. Please, just this once. Just this once." Those words were a refrain I'd heard for years. I'd cancelled my own plans, trips to the Oregon coast, pottery classes, dinners with friends, to make sure Kelly and Derek had what they needed. I'd eaten canned soup for weeks to stretch my budget after sending them money. And every time, I told myself it was worth it because they were my family. My only daughter. My only son-in-law. The only family I had left after Tom passed. I took a deep breath. "Kelly, I can't keep doing this. I've given you so much already. You and Derek need to figure this out." The silence on the other end was sharp, like a blade. Then she laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "Wow, Mom. So you're just gonna let us get kicked out? After everything we've been through? You're gonna turn your back on your own daughter?" Her words cut deep, but something in me snapped. I'd heard this guilt trip before, and for the first time, it didn't work. "Kelly, I've paid your rent for 5 years. I've bought your furniture, your groceries, your dog's medicine. I've given up my own plans to keep you afloat. When does it stop?" She didn't answer right away. Then, in a voice so low it was almost a whisper, she said, "You're so selfish, Mom. I thought you loved us." I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. Selfish. The word echoed in my head as I stared at the rain streaking down the window. 4 years, I believed I was doing the right thing, being the perfect mother, the dependable mother-in-law. I'd spent $40,000, money Tom and I had saved for our retirement, for our dreams of traveling to Italy, for a life we never got to live. And now, my own daughter was calling me selfish for daring to say no. The next day, I went to the bank. I'd set up automatic transfers to Kelly's account every month, $600 for rent, plus whatever extra they asked for. I sat down with my banker, Mrs. Larson, a kind woman who'd known me since Tom and I opened our first joint account 40 years ago. "Ellen," she said, her brow furrowed, "are you sure you want to cancel these transfers? You've been sending them for years." "I'm sure," I said, my voice steady. "I'm done financing their lives." Mrs. Larson didn't ask questions, but I could see the concern in her eyes. She'd watched my account dwindle month after month, year after year. She processed the cancellation, and I walked out of the bank feeling lighter than I had in years. For the first time, my money was mine again. That night, Kelly called again. Mom, what the hell? The bank said you cancelled the transfer. We're gonna get evicted. Do you even care? Kelly, I said, my voice calm but firm. You're 32 years old. Derek's 35. You're both capable of working, of paying your own bills. I've done enough. You're abandoning us, she screamed. After everything you've done, you're just gonna cut us off? You're unbelievable. I hung up again, but her words lingered. Abandoning them. Was that what I was doing? I sat in my living room, surrounded by the furniture Tom and I had picked out together, the photos of Kelly as a little girl smiling on the mantel. I remembered the days when she'd climb into my lap, her tiny arms around my neck, saying, "I love you, Mommy." When had that girl turned into this woman who only called when she needed money? A week later, I got a text from Derek. "Ellen, we need to talk. Can we come over?" I didn't respond right away. I knew what talk meant. They wanted to guilt me back into opening my wallet. But I agreed, mostly because I wanted to see if there was any trace of the daughter I used to know. When Kelly and Derek showed up, they weren't alone. A man in a cheap suit, carrying a briefcase, stepped out of their car. My stomach twisted. "Who's this?" I asked as they walked into my living room. "This is Mr. Caldwell," Kelly said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "He's a lawyer. We're worried about you, Mom. You've been acting strange lately, cutting us off, ignoring our calls. We think you might need help." I stared at her, my heart pounding. Help? What kind of help? Mr. Caldwell stepped forward, his smile too polished. "Mrs. Harper, your daughter and son-in-law are concerned about your mental well-being. They've noticed erratic behavior, and we're here to discuss options for your care. Perhaps a power of attorney to ensure your finances are managed properly." The room spun. They weren't just asking for money, they were trying to take control of it. My savings, my house, my life. I'd read about this kind of thing in the news. Elder financial abuse, families manipulating their parents to gain control of their assets. But I never thought it would happen to me. Not from my own daughter. "Get out," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "All of you. Get out of my house." Kelly's face hardened. "Mom, you're not thinking straight. We're trying to protect you. Protect me." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You're trying to protect your access to my bank account. You've taken $40,000 from me in 5 years, Kelly. You didn't invite me to your anniversary party last year because you said it was just for close friends. You call me when you need money, not when you want to see me. And now you bring a lawyer to my house to call me crazy? Get out." Derek stepped forward, his face red. "Ellen, you can't just cut us off. We've got bills you co-signed for. You owe us." "I owe you." I pointed to the door. "I owe myself a life. I've given you enough. Now leave." They left, but not before Mr. Caldwell handed me a business card. "Mrs. Harper, we'll be in touch. Your family has legal options if we believe you're not capable of making sound decisions." The door closed behind them, and I sank onto the couch, my hands trembling. I wasn't just angry. I was terrified. They were serious. They were going to try to declare me incompetent, to take everything I had left. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, going over my bank statements, calculating every penny I'd given them. $600 a month for rent, $200 for groceries, $1,500 for car repairs, $800 for Kelly's dental work, $2,000 for their credit card debt. It added up to $42,300. Money I'd taken from my retirement, from the nest egg Tom and I had built together. Money I'd given up my own dreams to provide. The next morning, I called my old friend Susan, a retired attorney who'd helped me with Tom's will. "Ellen," she said after I told her the whole story, "this is elder abuse, plain and simple. You need to protect yourself. Cancel their access to your accounts, change your locks, and get a lawyer who specializes in this kind of thing." I took her advice. I went back to the bank and opened a new account, transferring all my money to it. I hired a locksmith to change every lock on my house. And I found a lawyer, Mr. Thompson, who specialized in elder law. When I told him about Kelly and Derek's visit with the lawyer, he didn't sugarcoat it. Ellen, they're building a case to have you declared mentally incompetent. They'll need witnesses, medical evaluations, and a sympathetic judge, but it's a real threat. We need to document everything, every payment you've made, every interaction, every attempt to manipulate you. For the next week, I gathered evidence. Bank statements, text messages, emails where Kelly asked for money, voicemails where Derek promised to pay me back next month. I even found a receipt for the $1,200 couch I'd bought for their apartment, the one they'd bragged about on social media as if they'd paid for it themselves. Mr. Thompson was thorough. He had me undergo a full psychiatric evaluation with Dr. Patel, a respected psychologist, who confirmed I was in excellent mental health. Mrs. Harper, she said, your cognitive function is sharper than most people half your age. But Kelly and Derek didn't stop. A week later, I got a call from a social worker, Ms. Rivera, from the Department of Human Services. Mrs. Harper, we've received a report that you may be at risk. Your family is concerned about your mental health and financial decisions. I'd like to schedule a wellness check. I felt the blood drain from my face. They'd escalated it to the government. They were trying to paint me as a confused old woman who needed supervision. I agreed to the wellness check but insisted Mr. Thompson be present. When Ms. Rivera arrived, she was professional but skeptical, clearly influenced by whatever Kelly had told her. Mrs. Harper, she said, your daughter says you've been isolating yourself, making irrational financial decisions, and refusing help. Ms. Rivera, I said, holding her gaze, my daughter and her husband have been living off my money for 5 years. I've paid their rent, their bills, their debts. When I finally said no, they brought a lawyer to my house to try to take control of my finances. I'm not isolated. I have friends, I go to art classes, I volunteer at the community center. I'm not irrational. I've just decided to stop financing their lives. Mr. Thompson handed her a folder. This is documentation of the $42,300 my client has given her daughter and son-in-law over the past 5 years. It includes bank statements, receipts, and messages showing a pattern of financial dependence and emotional manipulation. Mrs. Harper also has a recent psychiatric evaluation confirming her mental competence. Ms. Rivera reviewed the documents, her expression shifting from skepticism to discomfort. Mrs. Harper, she said finally, based on this, I see no evidence of mental decline or need for intervention. I'll close this case. But it wasn't over. A month later, I got a letter from the county courthouse. Kelly and Derek had filed a lawsuit to have me declared mentally incompetent and to appoint Kelly as my legal guardian. My heart sank. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about stripping me of my freedom, my dignity, my right to make my own choices. Mr. Thompson was calm but serious. Ellen, they're desperate. They've spent money they don't have on lawyers, and they're betting on intimidating you into giving in. But we have everything we need to fight this. Your psychiatric evaluation, your financial records, your witnesses. They have to prove you're incompetent, and they can't. The trial was set for 3 months later, in February 2026. Those months were a blur of preparation. I met with Dr. Patel again for an updated evaluation. I gathered statements from my friends at the community center, from my art teacher, from my neighbor Mrs. Jenkins, who'd seen Kelly and Derek's car parked outside my house multiple times after I'd told them to stay away. I even got a statement from Mrs. Larson at the bank, who confirmed my financial decisions were rational and deliberate. The day of the trial, I woke up at 5 a.m., put on my navy blue dress, the one Tom always said made me look like $1 million, and drove to the courthouse with Mr. Thompson. Kelly and Derek were there, sitting with their lawyer, a slick man named Mr. Grayson. Kelly wouldn't look at me, but Derek stared, his jaw tight, like he was daring me to back down. Mr. Grayson's opening statement was a masterclass in manipulation. Your Honor, he said, Mrs. Ellen Harper has shown a clear decline in mental capacity. She's cut off her loving daughter and son-in-law, who depend on her support, without explanation. She's installed excessive security measures, isolated herself from family, and fallen under the influence of strangers who are exploiting her vulnerability. I wanted to scream. Strangers. My friends at the community center, who brought me soup when I had a cold. My art teacher, who encouraged me to paint again. But I stayed calm, trusting Mr. Thompson to tell my side. Their witnesses were a parade of half-truths. Kelly cried on the stand, saying she was devastated by my sudden hostility. Derek claimed I'd been forgetful and paranoid. A neighbor, Mr. Carter, who barely knew me, testified that I'd been acting strange by installing cameras. Their final witness was a psychiatrist, Dr. Ellis, who said my refusal to meet with him was evidence of mental instability. Mr. Thompson tore their case apart. He cross-examined Kelly, exposing her lies about our relationship. Mrs. Schuster, when was the last time you visited your mother without asking for money? She couldn't answer. He presented my financial records, showing the $42,300 I'd given them, and contrasted it with my current, well-managed accounts. Dr. Patel testified to my mental clarity, and my friends from the community center spoke about my active, engaged life. Mrs. Jenkins even testified about seeing Kelly and Derek drive by my house repeatedly, like they were casing the place. When it was my turn to testify, I stood tall. Your Honor, I said. For 5 years, I gave my daughter and her husband everything they asked for. I paid their rent, their bills, their debts, thinking it was my duty as a mother. But they never invited me to their home unless they needed something. They excluded me from their lives, and when I finally said no, they tried to take control of my money by calling me crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm just done being used. Mr. Thompson's closing argument was simple but powerful. Your Honor, this is not about a woman losing her mind. It's about a woman finding her strength. Mrs. Harper has every right to decide how to use her money, and her decision to stop financing her daughter's life is not evidence of incompetence. It's evidence of courage. The judge deliberated for an hour. When she returned, her voice was clear. Mrs. Ellen Harper is fully competent to manage her affairs. The plaintiffs have provided no credible evidence of mental decline, only evidence of their own financial dependence. The petition for guardianship is denied. I felt tears prick my eyes, not of sadness, but of relief. I'd won. Not just the lawsuit, but my life. My freedom. My right to be more than a bank account. That night, my friends threw a small party at my house. We laughed, we ate, we toasted to justice. Ellen, Mrs. Jenkins said, raising her glass. You're an inspiration. You didn't just save your money, you saved yourself. 6 months later, I sold my house and moved to a sunny condo in Bend, Oregon. I donated $20,000 to a local charity that supports elderly victims of financial abuse. I started painting again, joined a hiking club, and planned a trip to Italy, the one Tom and I always dreamed of. I haven't heard from Kelly or Derek since the trial. I heard through a mutual friend that they'd downsized to a smaller apartment, and Derek got a second job. Maybe they'll learn what I couldn't teach them, the value of standing on their own. Some nights, I sit on my balcony, watching the stars over the Deschutes River, and I think about the woman I used to be. Scared, guilt-ridden, believing I had to buy my daughter's love. That woman is gone. In her place is someone who knows her worth, who loves herself enough to say no, who understands that true love doesn't come with a price. My name is Ellen, I'm 68 years old, and I've finally learned that the most important person to love and protect is myself. If you liked my story, please share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you'd do in my place. And if you want to support more stories like this, consider a donation to keep my words flowing. With gratitude, Ellen.